You don't forget the sound of betrayal. It doesn't crash in like thunder. It doesn't give you sirens or warnings. It comes quiet, then sudden, like glass shattering inside your chest. That morning had started like any other. Ordinary. Peaceful. The sun spilled across the kitchen counter, warm and gold, as I stirred a spoon through my coffee. The radio hummed in the background. Some forgettable tune I wasn't really listening to. I had just returned from the store, bread and almond milk tucked under my arm, Tessa's favorite. I was humming, careless, unguarded, in the safety of my own home. And then the front door opened. At first, I thought nothing of it. Probably Alina, Tessa's sister, showing up uninvited again like she always did. She had a way of walking into our home as though she owned a piece of it. Most days, she barely met my eyes, which I didn't mind. I tolerated her presence out of love for my wife. But that morning was different. Her footsteps carried a nervous energy, sharp and unsettled. And then I saw Tessa behind her, my wife's face drawn tight, her expression already cracked with tension, as if she'd just received news of a death. I turned from the counter slowly, coffee warm in my hand, ready to offer a simple good morning. But the words never left my mouth. Adrian got me pregnant. 7 words. That's all it took. Alina's voice trembled, like a badly rehearsed script, her lips quivering for effect. It was a performance. And I stood frozen, stunned, my brain refusing to register what had just entered the air between us. I waited for Tessa to laugh, to turn to her sister and tell her to stop, to look me in the eye, even for a second, and see the truth. But she didn't.
She didn't ask.
She didn't blink. Her hand moved before her heart had a chance to question it. Crack. The sound of her palm against my face still echoes in my skull. My head whipped sideways. The coffee mug slipped from my grip, shattering against the tile floor. I didn't touch my cheek. I didn't defend myself. The pain wasn't from the slap. It was from the instant transformation of the woman I had built a life with. The woman I had whispered to in the dark, trusted with my secrets, held through storms, now a stranger staring at me with fire in her eyes and venom on her lips. Tessa, I croaked, finally finding my voice. What the hell are you? But I didn't get to finish. Her brothers stormed in. Jared and Marco, built like linebackers, always hungry for a fight. It was as if they had been waiting on the porch, fists clenched, sleeves rolled up. They didn't ask a single question. They didn't let me explain. They just grabbed me, one on each arm, dragging me through the house like I was filth staining their sister's floor. I was barefoot, dressed in nothing but an old t-shirt, still dizzy from the whiplash of it all. Get your hands off me, I muttered. But the words fell weak, lost in the chaos. Outside, Jared slammed his fist into my stomach. Marco shoved me against the fence, so hard my vision scattered into stars. I didn't fight back. Not because I couldn't, but because I was still trying to understand what had just happened. How a single lie had rewritten my life in less than a minute. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Someone across the street lifted a phone, recording my humiliation. Freak. Jared spat at my feet. His voice carried the kind of disgust that didn't belong to me, but was now mine to wear. And through it all, Tessa stayed inside.
She didn't follow.
She didn't ask if I was still breathing. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her wedding ring glinting under the light as if it still meant something. Her face was carved in certainty, already burying me alive in her mind. I staggered toward the street. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Missed calls. Messages. Voices from people I hadn't heard from in months. I ignored them all. What could I possibly say? That my wife's sister had dropped a bomb in the middle of my life, and nobody gave me the chance to speak before they built the gallows? Back inside, I packed a bag. Slowly. Silently. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't try to convince anyone of the truth. What was the point? They didn't want truth. They wanted a villain. A scapegoat they could stone and feel righteous while doing it. I glanced at the shattered mug on the floor, my hands trembling. Blood stained my fingers. I wasn't sure if it was from broken ceramic or the fists of her brothers. It didn't matter. I showered. wrapped a towel around my ribs, and with a bar of soap, I scrawled a single line on the bathroom mirror. You didn't even ask. Then I left.
No screaming. No explanations.
No grand exit. Just a man with a bruised jaw and a hollow chest walking away from the ruins of the life he thought was his. Funny thing, I always imagined I'd recognize the exact moment my world would collapse. I thought there'd be alarms, warnings, some kind of signal. But in reality, all it took was a lie and a single slap. And that slap? It didn't just break the skin on my cheek. It killed a part of me I will never get back. They say the truth will set you free. But that only works if someone cares enough to listen. 2 days later, I sat in a dusty public library, scrolling through emails on a borrowed computer. My life, already reduced to silence and exile that I wasn't checking for much. Just routine things, logging into my accounts, canceling subscriptions, updating passwords. Small acts of control in a life that had spun off its axis.
But then I saw it.
A subject line I'll never forget. Notice of administrative leave. I sat in a stiff wooden chair at the public library, hoodie pulled low over my head, and opened the email. I read it once.
Twice.
3 times. The words didn't change. Given the serious allegations circulating online, the board has decided it is in the company's best interest to initiate a separation process pending a formal investigation. I froze. Allegations? What allegations? I hadn't posted anything. I hadn't spoken to anyone, other than a gas station clerk and a motel manager who only cared if my card swiped. But the gossip had grown legs. Against my better judgment, I logged into social media. I rarely used it, and there it was. A thread. No names, but anyone who knew us could put the pieces together. Married man. Sister-in-law. Scandal. Pregnancy. Betrayal. Justice. It was all there.
Vague accusation.
Out of context quotes. Strangers weighing in as if they had front row seats to my life. Men like this are everywhere. He deserves to rot. Why aren't more women believed?
Trash.
Just trash. But it spread like wildfire. It was like watching my own funeral, except it wasn't flowers people were throwing. It was stones. By the 3rd day, my landlord texted, "Hey man.
Sorry.
Just business. Other tenants are concerned. I'll need you to vacate by the end of the week." I stared at the message, thumb hovering over the screen. Then I typed back, "No problem. I'll be gone today." And I was. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't ask for more time. Because I understood something now. When you're accused of something, especially as a man, especially something vile, the truth doesn't matter. Not right away. People pick sides. And most choose the side that makes them feel righteous. You'd be shocked how fast a person disappears, how quickly they get erased. There was a bakery down the street I used to visit every morning. Mrs. Ingram, the owner, an older woman with kind eyes, always handed me my coffee with a smile. "Back at it again, huh?" she'd say, like clockwork. One morning, I walked in as usual. She froze mid-pour. Her hands stiff, her eyes darting anywhere but mine. "We're closed today," she muttered. But there were 3 customers behind me, sitting at tables, watching. A woman at the corner leaned toward her friend and whispered, "That's him." I walked out without a word. By day 5, my phone might as well have been dead.
Tessa blocked me.
So did her mother, Eloise. So did friends we'd shared dinners, wine nights, birthdays with. Even people I barely knew, friends of friends, cut me off. As if the rumor was contagious, something they could catch by keeping me in their contacts. I remembered the day I helped Eloise move a heavy patio set in the middle of a heat wave. She had called me the most dependable man in the family. Now she was online, commenting beneath a post about betrayal. Some men are wolves in family clothing. Wolves. I wasn't even human anymore. I had stayed silent after the slap. After the beating, after the shame. But reading that, it broke something final inside me. I wanted to fight back. To scream. To post proof, screenshots, voicemails, texts. Anything. But there was nothing. No secret meetings. No hidden conversations. No evidence. because what they accused me of had never happened. And that's the cruelest part. Proof wasn't necessary. Not when a lie was more exciting. That evening, my phone lit up with a call from a college friend. One of the few who hadn't vanished yet. "Hey man," he said carefully. "Look, I don't want to pry, but did you really?" I hung up before he finished. If someone who had known me for 10 years had to ask, then he never really knew me at all. That night, I checked into a cheap motel on the edge of the city. The ceiling was stained, the sheets smelled of bleach, and the silence was suffocating. I lay there for hours, staring at the fan blades spinning crookedly above me, my mind turning like broken machinery. How could one sentence, 7 words, erase an entire life? I thought of the little things I had done over the years. Showing up early to family gatherings. Building furniture for Tessa's cousin. Helping Alina, of all people, install a bookshelf while she scrolled on her phone and told me I'd missed a screw. Now I was a ghost. A shadow in their memories. A nightmare version of myself they could hate and discard without guilt. There was no court date. No trial. No report. Just a story. And once it spread, it didn't need sunlight. Only whispers. This wasn't justice. It was judgment. It was performance. People caring more about looking like they believed than actually searching for the truth. And Alina, she played her role well. I heard through whispers that she was receiving sympathy gifts. That people called her brave. Her social media bio now read, "Survivor. Broken heart." I wanted to vomit. Tessa never texted me. Not once. When I finally checked my bank account, reality crashed in. I couldn't afford to stay hidden much longer. My severance was frozen. There were whispers of possible legal action, though for what, I had no idea. That's when the fear truly set in. Not the fear of being hated, but the fear of being erased. Of becoming nothing more than a name people spat with disgust. That night, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. My beard was uneven. My eyes lifeless. And worst of all, I looked guilty. And that terrified me. Because if I looked guilty to myself, what did I look like to the world? People think rock bottom hits like a crash. All at once. It doesn't. It's slow. It's steady. It's the silence after the storm, when you realize the wreckage isn't temporary. It's your new life. Rock bottom doesn't slam into you all at once. It comes slow, layer by layer, until you finally accept that no one is coming to save you. And if you want to keep breathing, you have to become someone else entirely. I sold what little I owned, stuffed the rest into a small duffel, and bought a one-way ticket. No forwarding address. No plan. Just distance. Distance from the lie. From the slap. From the people who had let the rumors spread like fire while I stood in the middle, burning alive. When your own name starts to feel heavier than your body, when it becomes a burden instead of a home, it's time to let it go. That morning, I wandered into a forgotten travel agency wedged between a laundromat and a pawn shop. The kind of place most people don't notice. The kind of place you only find when you're desperate to leave. The bell above the door jingled weakly, like it hadn't been touched in years. Behind the counter sat a young woman, head bent over a crossword puzzle. She looked up, pen still in her hand. "Where to?" she asked. I hesitated. My throat felt like sand. "Anywhere but here," I whispered. She chuckled, assuming I was joking. But I didn't laugh. I meant every word. I didn't care where I landed. I just needed movement. A direction. A chance to disappear. By nightfall, I was on a bus heading toward a town I couldn't even pronounce. A fake name scribbled on the ticket. A duffel at my feet carrying everything I had left. 2 shirts, a pair of boots, my old laptop, and a weathered leather notebook filled with sketches, scraps of thought, fragments of the man I used to be. The ride stretched on endlessly. I sat in the back, head pressed against the glass, watching the world transform, cities fading into barren fields, fields swallowed by forests, forests unraveling into coastline that seemed to stretch forever. Somewhere along the way, I stopped counting hours. I didn't sleep, didn't eat, just stared, just thought. Silence after your life explodes is a strange thing. It isn't peace. Not at first. It's fog.
Sick, numbing fog.
A vacuum where guilt and confusion echo louder than anything else. Over and over, I replayed it. The slap. The lie. The way everyone turned on me without hesitation, like they'd been waiting for the excuse. And a darker thought kept creeping in. Maybe they had seen something in me I never saw. Was I too quiet? Too eager to help? Too easy to erase? That last question cut the deepest. Easy to forget. By the time the bus pulled into its final stop, night had fallen thick and heavy. The driver leaned back, voice flat. Last stop. That was fine. I didn't need more options. The town was small, remote. The kind of place left behind decades ago. Wooden buildings chipped and faded. A harbor where old boats sagged against their ropes like tired animals. No cell towers.
No billboards.
Just salt air and silence. I walked the streets with my duffel slung over my shoulder. A man sat on a porch, cigarette glowing in the dark as he mended a fishing net. He studied me, nodded once. I nodded back. No words exchanged. And somehow that was enough. At the inn, a woman behind the counter looked me up and down.
Cash only, she said.
I slid bills across the desk. 2 weeks. Know anyone who needs help? I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. Depends what kind, she replied. Anything that keeps me moving. She pointed across the harbor. Try Ben. Old fisherman. Always needs a hand. Ben didn't ask for a resume. He didn't even ask for my name. Just shoved a pair of gloves into my hands and pointed at a pile of nets that reeked of rot and salt. So I worked. I worked until my back screamed and my hands split raw. And for the first time in weeks, nobody whispered. Nobody stared. Nobody judged. I wasn't a husband. I wasn't an accused man. I wasn't a ghost. I was just a pair of hands getting a job done. At night, I collapsed onto the thin mattress of my rented room, staring at the cracked ceiling until sleep finally dragged me under. That became my life.
Wake. Work. Vash. Sleep. No headlines.
No internet.
No updates.
Just fog.
Salt. Sweat.
Silence. And for a while it was enough. I didn't use my real name. Instead, I became Miles.
Simple.
Detached.
Clean.
The man without a past. No one asked questions, and I didn't offer answers. Some nights I walked the shoreline, letting the wind bite my face until I felt numb enough to breathe again. Other nights, I scribbled in my notebook. Not full entries, just fragments. A sentence. A word. Sometimes just silence scratched into paper. I wasn't trying to remember. I was trying to rebuild. In town, faces grew familiar. But not like before. There was no pity in their eyes.
No suspicion.
Just casual acknowledgement. Morning, Miles. You on the West Dock today? Coffee with sugar or cream? They didn't want my story. They wanted my presence. That was new. That was enough. The more I kept to myself, the more space I found in my head. I started running at sunrise. At first, just minutes. Then miles. Then more. My lungs burned. My legs shook. But for once, the pain was mine to choose. A struggle with meaning. After a while, I began fixing things around town. Loose gutters. Tilted sheds. Leaky boats. A woman named June asked if I could help her update her business website. I told her I wasn't much of a tech guy. She insisted. So I borrowed a laptop from the library, watched tutorials, and figured it out. Then another shopkeeper asked. Then another. I didn't realize it at first, but something had shifted. I was still invisible. But this time it was by choice. I wasn't Adrian, the accused. I was Miles, the man with tools, time, and no shadows chasing him. One night, I stood on the dock after work, the sky melting into a deep indigo. Stars slipped across the water, mirrored in the slow sway of the boats. And I thought of Tessa, of her face the moment she believed the worst of me. I wondered if she missed me, if regret ever touched her. But then I let the thought drift into the dark water, because the truth was, It didn't matter anymore. What mattered was this moment. This stillness. The slow rebirth of a man from the ashes of who he used to be. No headlines screaming my name. No buzzing group chats full of half-truths.
No slaps. No shouts.
Just fog.
Salt.
Silence. And the deliberate work of becoming someone no one could erase. The name Miles stopped being a disguise somewhere along the way. It shifted into something else entirely. Not a shield. A beginning. I hadn't chosen it with purpose. It came to me by accident. The name stitched on the back of a faded blue work shirt I pulled from a donation bin near the pier. The letters were cracked, threadbare, ghosted with years of wear. Someone else had worn it long before me. When the townspeople started calling me by it, I never corrected them. Funny how identity can grow from scraps. By the end of my first year in that fog-wrapped harbor town, I wasn't just existing anymore. I was breathing, living.
Slowly. Carefully.
Ben, the old fisherman who had first put gloves in my hands, suffered a stroke that winter. His daughter Clara returned to care for him. She was tough, practical, not quick to smile. I respected that. She didn't waste words. One evening, as we were locking up the net shed, she studied me with sharp eyes. "You're good with numbers, right?" I shrugged. "Decent." She tossed a salt-stained notebook onto the table. "Try making sense of that." Ben's inventory was chaos. Scribble half-thoughts, permits tucked between grocery receipts, expenses jotted in margins. That night, I sat at the rickety desk in my rented room, sorting through it all. I organized, cross-checked, digitized. By dawn, I had turned his mess into a clean ledger, a system that actually made sense. The next morning, I slid the spreadsheet across to Clara. "You did this in one night?" she asked, her voice caught between suspicion and awe. I nodded. She stared at the screen, then at me. "You ever think about doing more than just scrubbing nets?" The truth was yes. Quietly. In the hours when sleep refused to come. I'd always had an interest in coding, in building systems out of nothing but lines of logic. But back then, in my old life, I never leaned into it. I was too busy being what everyone else needed. The dependable husband, the quiet son-in-law, the steady employee, the man who kept things running but never asked for more. But here I had time. And time can build entire worlds. That night, I registered a domain. amreevstech.com.
Not my real name.
Not quite. Just enough to honor the initials I had buried and the man I was trying to create. I started small, building websites for local businesses. The Florist, a small cafe, a boat rental shop that barely kept its doors open. Clients didn't ask for my story. They didn't care about my past. They just cared that what I built worked. As money trickled in, I rented a workshop at the edge of town. Dusty windows, slanted floorboards, drafts sneaking through the cracks. I filled it with what I could afford, a second-hand computer, a folding desk, a kettle, a space heater. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Every nail I hammered into those walls reminded me I was still here, still capable, still building. Word traveled fast along the coast. A furniture maker from 2 towns over came for help launching his online store. A retired teacher wanted to start a blog. A young mother dreamed of sharing her recipes with the world. I never said no. I charged fair. Not cheap, not inflated.
Fair.
People paid. Sometimes in cash, sometimes in bread, sometimes in stories. And still, no one asked me where I came from. They just accepted that I belonged. Somehow, without meaning to, I became the tech man for the entire coastal strip. I even sponsored a small-town race, printing A.M. Reeves tech on the backs of the runners' bibs. Standing at the starting line, seeing my name stitched into something that wasn't shame, it was surreal. Then one day, I found myself standing in front of the town council.
Me.
Miles. Presenting a digital system I built to help track local repairs and budgets. I showed them how it worked, step by step, my hand steady, my voice clear. And when I finished, they applauded.
Applauded me.
For the first time in years, I felt the sound cut through me. Not like judgment, but like light breaking open a locked room. That night, I walked to the harbor. The sky was heavy with sunset, water glowing molten gold beneath the cliffs. I slipped off my shoes, stood barefoot in the sand, and let the tide touch my feet. And I cried. Not out of sorrow, not even relief, but disbelief. Because against all odds, I had done what once felt impossible. I built a man no one could erase.
No headlines. No accusations.
No past to burn me alive. Just smiles. But even in triumph, whispers from the past crept in. They always did.
Some nights I dreamed of that day. The slap.
The look on Tessa's face when she chose to believe the worst. The hands of her brothers dragging me out like I was trash. I woke sweating, heart pounding, braced for a knock at the door. Braced for a mob carrying torches lit with memory. But no one came. The truth is, people don't chase ghosts. And that's what I had become.
By choice.
Still, I carried my secrets close. The leather notebook that once held fragments of pain had transformed. Now it held plans, sketches, checklists. And taped into the back cover with worn black tape was a tiny USB drive. One I carried everywhere. It held a recording. A file sent to me 6 months after I vanished. Passed along by a mutual acquaintance who had no idea what weight they were handing me. Alina's voice.
Clear.
Laughing. Mocking. Confessing. I told him he did it because I hated how perfect they thought he was. He looked at me like I was nothing. So, I made him into nothing. I only listened once. I didn't cry. I didn't scream.
I just sat there. Silent.
Then I backed it up. Locked it away. Carried it with me. Not for revenge. Not even for justice. But as proof. Proof that I hadn't imagined it. That the world really had twisted sideways because of one jealous woman's lie. It's strange. Healing never looks the way you think it will. I never climbed a mountain to scream at the sky. I never shattered walls with my fists. I never wrote letters dripping with rage. I just kept building. One site. One system. One quiet success after another. Brick by brick. Click by click. A life being stitched back together. Eventually, I hired 2 locals. Paid them well. Gave them freedom with their hours. When people asked why I worked so hard, why I cared, I told them the one truth I could share without unraveling everything. I know what it feels like to have your life ripped away. So I'm trying to build one no one can take. That was all they ever got from me.
And it was enough.
But sometimes, when a stranger's laugh carried through the market, or when I heard the name Alina drift across a cafe, I froze. My pulse skipped. Old wounds throbbed beneath the skin. Still, the town kept moving forward. And so did I. Every wire I fixed. Every old boat I helped drag into the digital age. Every broken login I restored. Each was a fragment of myself returning. Not the old me. Not the man bent and broken by lies. Someone else. Someone new. A man named Miles. And for once, the only reflection I answered to was my own. I remember the sound before I remember the sight. It wasn't an ordinary knock. It was frantic. Desperate. The sound of fists slamming against a door like it was the only barrier between life and drowning. My hands froze on the keyboard. I'd been mid-email with a client in Zurich, negotiating the final terms of a long-term systems upgrade. The cursor blinked, waiting for my thoughts. But my thoughts had already left. I stood, moved to the window. Outside, the storm raged. Rain tore down in thick, slanting sheets, turning the streets into rivers. The wind howled like it was mourning something ancient. Thunder split the sky. 3 more bangs shook the door. Then a voice. Muffled, but familiar. My hand hovered on the knob. And then, Adrian, please. The sound fractured on the second syllable. A soft crumble, raw with exhaustion. I hadn't heard that name, spoken in that voice, in more than 3 years. It was her. Tessa. I opened the door slowly. Not out of hesitation, but because I didn't know what version of her would be standing there. Truth is, I had imagined this moment before. Not often, but enough to know part of my healing still lived in the shadow of her ghost. And now she was real. She stood there drenched, hair plastered against her cheeks, eyes wide, drowning in guilt and grief. Her arms hugged her own body, as if holding herself together from the inside out. "Please," she whispered, voice trembling. "I know you're in there." I didn't move,
Didn't speak.
I just stood, staring. The storm roared around us, yet the silence between us was louder. She looked so small. Once I would have pulled her in instantly, wrapped her in a towel, set tea on the stove, held her until the shaking stopped. But that man, the one who protected her from everything, he didn't live here anymore. She touched the doorframe, as if needing it to hold her upright. "I've been looking for you," she said. "For years." I raised an eyebrow, not in surprise but in distrust. Nothing good ever followed that sentence. I stepped aside. She hesitated, then walked in. It was like watching someone enter a house that once belonged to them but no longer remembered their scent. The room was warm.
Sparse.
A couch.
A desk.
A few framed sunrise photos from my morning runs. No traces of her. No ghosts allowed. She stood awkwardly, dripping onto the floor. "How did you find me?" I asked flat. She looked down. "It took time. Too much time. Dead ends everywhere. I hired someone. And when I learned the truth, I had to come." The truth. I repeated the words under my breath. Tested their weight. She nodded, eyes shining but refusing to break. "I didn't come to argue," she whispered. I needed you to see me, to let me explain." I turned, walked to my desk, pulled open the drawer. The USB drive lay there. The same one I had carried for years like a secret badge of survival. The proof I never shared. The truth I never used. I held it out. "I already know everything." My voice was quiet, unshaken. She froze, eyes darting between me and the drive. "What is it?" she asked, though some part of her already knew. "Take it. Play it. If you still want to talk after that, come back tomorrow." For a moment, she didn't move. Her hand shook as she finally reached out, fingers trembling against the tiny weight of it. And then, silence again. I sat back at my desk, opened the laptop, returned to my email.
The door closed.
Her footsteps splashed away into the rain. The storm pressed against the windows like it wanted in. Then silence. Hours passed. I didn't check my phone. Didn't check the clock. Just sat, watching the drizzle soften into mist. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, retracing every life I'd lived since that slap. Since her brothers dragged me out like garbage. Since her silence became louder than the lie itself. What did she expect to find here? A man waiting? A heart that stayed soft? A welcome mat still rolled out? I didn't know. But I knew this. I wasn't her husband anymore. Not legally. Not emotionally. Not spiritually. Morning came wrapped in fog, thick and pale, like even the town wanted to shield me from what came next. I didn't leave the house. Didn't open emails. I just sat with a mug of black coffee, waiting for nothing. Until I saw her. This time, she didn't knock. She sat on the porch bench, hands clasped, head bowed. Like a child waiting for judgment. When her eyes lifted, I saw it. A shift. No more tears. No more fire. Just ache. I stepped outside. She stood. "I played it," she said softly. I nodded. Her throat tightened. "I destroyed you." I stayed quiet. "Adrian." Her voice broke. I didn't know.
I didn't ask.
I believed her. I raised my hand, stopped her mid-sentence. "You don't have to say it." She blinked fast. Too fast. Like her body was fighting to dam the flood that she hadn't earned the right to release. Her voice cracked. "Do you hate me?" I turned away from her, looked out at the sea. The waves had settled. Slow. Gentle. Indifferent. No, my voice was steady. "Hate takes energy. And I don't have anything left to give you." She crumbled, fell to her knees on the wet boards of my porch. I didn't reach for her. Didn't move. Didn't offer even the smallest mercy. I just walked past. Because I had a meeting in 20 minutes. One of the biggest contracts of my career. Life had moved on. And so had I. She came back the next day.
Nonak.
No words. Just her shadow, standing across the road. Watching my workshop like a child staring at a locked gate, trying to gather courage to walk through.
I saw her through the blinds.
My hands moved over the keyboard, installing a cybersecurity patch for a client's database. And I kept working. Because she didn't shake me anymore. Her presence didn't cut. It didn't stir anger. Or longing. Or anything close to love. It was just curiosity. Like watching a storm roll across a mountain you'd already climbed. When she finally stepped in, the bell above the door gave a soft chime.
You're busy, she said.
I'm always busy. I didn't look up.
The air changed. Damp.
Ocean mist and rain-soaked fabric clinging to her. She was still wearing the same coat. And her voice. It wasn't the voice I remembered. It was smaller, drained of color, stripped of power. I didn't sleep, she whispered. I gave her nothing. No words. Just the sound of fingers on keys, the hum of the heater filling the silence. She drifted to the edge of my desk. Waited. Until finally I lifted my eyes. I need to say something. I leaned back. Gave her a single nod. Her voice shook. I didn't know she recorded it. Alina. I never thought she'd admit it. But she did. I said flatly. Yes. The word caught in her throat. I knew 2 years ago, I told her. Her head snapped. Blinked. What? I knew. About the lie. About the recording. About everything. 2 years ago. The words hit her like a slap of silence. She stumbled back, pale, unsteady. But you never said anything.
No. Ian Suara.
I didn't. Her voice cracked again. Why? Because the truth wouldn't have changed what you did. My tone never shifted. It wouldn't erase the slap. Wouldn't undo your brothers dragging me across the lawn like I was a criminal. Wouldn't fix the weeks I spent hiding from a world that spat on me for something I didn't do. So I stayed quiet. I wanted to see what mattered more to you, my silence or your guilt. She covered her mouth. Her legs trembled like they were about to fold. I would have come sooner if I'd known. I cut her off. But you didn't want to know. That's the part you keep skipping. You didn't ask. You didn't doubt. You didn't even flinch. You chose her over me before I could speak. Her knees bent into the chair across from me. Shoulders hunched. Skin pale. She cried. Adrian, she whispered. Alina cried. She said you looked at her with hate. That you cornered her. That she didn't know how to say no. My eyes narrowed. And that was enough for you to decide I deserved to be ruined? Her voice snapped, sharp with desperation. I was scared. I didn't know what to believe. And the way she said it, she sounded so broken. So did I. My voice was ice. She froze. Mouth open. Closed again. Her eyes shimmered, but no tears fell. You didn't come back for the truth, I said, leaning forward. You came back because you lost everything else. The words landed. I saw her flinch. I know about your divorce. I know your family turned on you. Your mother called it an old scandal and told you to get over it. I know Jared got exposed for what he did at the school. I know Marco's business folded. I know because I stayed silent. And while I stayed silent, the truth had time to grow legs of its own. Her lips trembled, but no sound came. You didn't come back because of regret, I pressed on. You came back because you wanted something to feel clean again. Her voice fell to a whisper. No, that's not true. It is, I said. My voice softened, but didn't bend. And that's okay. I'm not mad about it. I'm just not giving you what you came here for. Her eyes searched mine. What do you think I came here for? Redemption, I said. Closure. Maybe even forgiveness. I let the silence settle like dust. But what you don't realize is, I forgave you a long time ago. Not for your sake. For mine. Because if I didn't, I wouldn't have survived. But forgiveness doesn't mean reunion. It doesn't mean welcome. It just means I stopped carrying your sins like they were mine. Her shoulders shook. She covered her face with both hands. For the first time, she broke.
No mascara.
No stage. No audience. Just a woman, buried beneath the rubble of her own decisions. When she looked up again, her voice was fragile, almost childlike. Do you think we could ever fix this? I tilted my head.
Honest. Calm.
Not cruel.
No.
She nodded.
Slowly.
Like each movement carried a century of weight. I understand, she whispered. I deserve that. No one deserves what I lived through, I told her. But people make mistakes. The problem is, you made yours and let me pay for it alone. We sat there a moment longer. Not words. Just air. Just the ache of everything unspoken. Finally, she stood. Straightened her coat. I'll go now, she said. I nodded. Take care of yourself. Her hand lingered on the door. She looked back one last time. I hope you find happiness. I already have, I said. And I meant it. She left.
No begging. No promises.
No twisted stories. Just the truth. And then there was silence. And me, the man who had survived both. I don't know how long she had been waiting the next morning, but when I finally stepped outside, she was already there. Sitting on the bench by my porch, her back rigid, her hands knotted together in her lap. She looked like a child waiting for judgment she already knew would fall. Her eyes stayed on the gravel path, tracing it from my steps to the road, as if the answer to everything might be written there. I stood in the doorway. The air still carried the chill of night mist. Birds called from the wires overhead. The docks echoed with early voices, fishermen, joggers, a town beginning its day. But all I could hear was the silence stretching between us. That silence that once meant comfort. And now, just a wire pulled tight between two cliffs.
She looked up at me at last.
And something was missing.
Pride. Hope.
Maybe both. The last thread of the story she'd been clinging to had snapped.
I listened to it, she said.
I didn't answer. Her voice faltered. I listened to her voice. Over and over. It didn't sound like her. That's what scared me most. Her throat trembled, but no tears came. This wasn't the weeping, broken version of her I'd seen before. This was different.
Raw.
It wasn't the Alina I knew. Or maybe it was the only real one. And I never wanted to see it. I stepped down onto the porch but didn't sit. I didn't owe her comfort.
What I owed was to myself.
Closure. She was laughing, Tessa whispered, eyes fixed on the wooden boards at her feet. Laughing, like she had pulled off the cleverest trick in the world. I nodded slowly. Because to her, that's all it ever was. When her face lifted to mine, I saw years etched into it. Years of denial. Years of swallowing a lie so deeply it had fused with her bones. And now, stripped of it, what remained was scar tissue. She said she did it because you looked at her like she was nothing. That she hated how I never wanted her attention. She mistook basic decency for rejection. I said, my tone sharp, precise. She wanted to punish me for not feeding her need to feel important. Tessa closed her eyes. She hated me too. I think that's what I couldn't face. That it wasn't just about you. It was about both of us. What we had. What we represented.
Possibly, I said.
But it doesn't change what she did. Or what you chose to do after. She flinched. Her chest rose with a slow, shaky breath. I keep wondering, she whispered, if she had never confessed, if that recording never came out, would I have ever seen it? Or would I have kept living with the version of you she created? The one I helped make real? That was the question. And she already knew the answer. You came back because the illusion collapsed, I told her. Not because you were searching for truth, but because you had nothing left to cling to.
She didn't argue.
Instead, her voice strengthened slightly. I remember the day it all happened. I keep replaying it. You were holding coffee. You looked calm, confused. But I didn't see that. I just saw a problem. And you were the problem. I looked toward the dock. The water shimmered in the rising sun. People don't understand betrayal, I said quietly. It's not just the lie. Not even the slap. It's the speed. The speed with which someone decides you're guilty. The speed they throw away everything you ever were to them. That's what breaks you. Her tears slid silently now. She did. I ruined you, she whispered, the words barely audible. I didn't correct her.
Didn't soften it.
Because sometimes people need to sit in the wreckage they created. For so long I told myself it wasn't that bad, she continued. That it was just a mistake. But hearing her voice, mocking, proud, it shattered everything I built to protect myself. She rose slowly, as if her confession weighed down every bone. I'm not here to fix anything. I know that's impossible. And I'm not here for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just needed to look you in the eye after hearing that recording. Because I needed you to know that I know now. I looked at her, really looked. And what I saw wasn't the woman I had once loved. Not the wife who laughed at my burnt dinners. Not the woman who slid her cold feet beneath my legs at night. That woman had died the day the lie was born. This was someone else. A stranger who had walked through fire of her own making and crawled out scarred.
Burned.
But maybe, finally honest. There's nothing left to rebuild, I said. She nodded. I know. She stepped down from the porch. Turned once. For what it's worth, I hope the life you built gives you peace. You deserve that, Adrian. I let her use my name. Let it hang in the air before I answered. It does. And I walked back inside. Closed the door. Not in anger. Not in bitterness. Just finally. There would be no rekindled love.
No cinematic reunion.
No apology in the rain. What the tape revealed wasn't just Alina's lie. It revealed the cracks that had always existed between us.
Doubt.
Distance. A love too fragile to survive the weight of truth. And me? I had survived. Without her. Without all of them. Because sometimes the only way to reclaim your name is to stop asking anyone else to spell it right.
I thought that was the end.
That I'd never see her again. That she'd return to the ruins of her old life. Vanish back into the wreckage she helped build. But I was wrong. Tessa didn't leave. She stayed. She stayed. Not in my home. Not on my street. But in the town. At first she rented a small place. The innkeeper helped her settle in, gave her a roof, a little normalcy. Later, Clara from the net shed spotted her fumbling through groceries with trembling hands and offered her something steadier. I didn't go searching for answers. Didn't ask why she lingered. Truth is, I didn't care to know. But I noticed. She moved through town differently now.
No pride. No arrogance.
Just stillness. Like someone trying not to disturb the air. She showed up at the clinic, rolling up her sleeves. Picked trash from the sand after storms. Tutored kids after school. Nothing grand. Just small acts, repeated quietly. I kept my distance. Not because I was curious about her so-called redemption. But because I needed to understand why my anger had burned itself out. She didn't knock on my door again. Didn't chase me down. She simply stepped into the rhythm of the world I'd built.
Carefully.
Quietly. Like she knew she was walking across something fragile, something sacred, something that no longer belonged to her. For a while, the town didn't know who she was to me. She never said. But small towns breathe in whispers. And whispers live long. Eventually, a few people put the pieces together. Some came to me, voice low, asking, "You all right with this?" My answer never changed. She's not mine to chase off. She's just here. They nodded. That was enough. One afternoon, I saw her at the farmer's market. She was holding a bag of apples, laughing with an old woman who sold jars of honey. The sun caught her hair, and for a fleeting second, the ghost of who she used to be shimmered before me. Then it vanished.
She noticed me. No smile. No wave.
Just a small nod. I nodded back. That was the new language between us. No words.
No wounds reopened.
Just acknowledgement. Two travelers who once shared a path, now walking in opposite directions. Weeks stretched into months. She kept working, kept giving. The town slowly folded her into its rhythm, the same way it had folded me. by making her earn it. People stopped asking about her. Instead, they asked about my business again. The shop grew.
Clients multiplied.
I hired a third developer, bought better gear, even found myself speaking at the local college, giving talks about digital identity and resilience. I never spoke about the past, but every word I offered carried its shadow. Still, in the quiet of my evenings, the same question came back like an ache in my ribs. Would she have come if Alina had never confessed? The answer never shifted.
No.
Her return wasn't born from faith. It was born from fallout. And forgiveness, no matter how clean it sounds in sermons, doesn't change that. I could forgive her humanity, her fear, her weakness in the moment. But I could never forget that when the storm came, she let me drown first. She chose to believe a lie over the man who carried her mother after her hip broke. The man who cooked for her, traced maps on her back, whispered plans for the future in the dark. I didn't hate her anymore. But I didn't trust her either. And trust, that's the thing forgiveness can't rebuild. One evening, as the sun sank behind the lighthouse, she approached me. I was locking up the workshop. The sky was painted purple and bruised, waves licking against the dock. "Do you mind?" she asked, gesturing to the bench by the stairs. I shrugged. "It's a public bench." She sat.
Careful.
"Not close. I'm not trying to win you back," she said softly. "I know," I replied. "I just wanted to say thank you." I looked at her, surprised. For what? For not telling everyone who I was. For letting me live here without dragging your story behind me like chains. Her words struck something. And in that moment, I saw the difference between apology and accountability. She wasn't here to be forgiven. She was here to shoulder the weight she should have carried long ago. "I didn't keep it quiet for you," I told her. "I kept it quiet for me. Because peace doesn't come from retelling the worst parts of your life to strangers." She nodded, accepting. Her eyes dropped. "I never asked you that day. When I slapped you. When it all began. What were you going to say? Before everything went sideways." I looked out at the water. I was going to ask what the hell she was talking about. Because it was so out of nowhere I thought it had to be a joke. I was stunned. That's all. I didn't even get the chance to defend myself. Tessa turned away, shame written across her face. And instead of asking me one question, I continued. "You hit me. You let them drag me outside. You let it happen." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I know. And you'll have to live with that," I said. "Not because I want you to suffer, but because that's the consequence. The echo of choices we don't get to undo." Her head lowered. "I do live with it. Every day." We sat in silence. The kind of silence that holds its own weight. Finally, she stood. The sky had gone dark around us. "This will be the last time I speak to you directly," she said. "I needed to say those things. But I'll respect the space you've made. I won't interfere." I nodded. As she turned, I called after her. "You're doing good work at the clinic." She stopped, turned just slightly, and smiled. "Thank you." Then she walked into the haze of evening and didn't look back. I stayed on the bench, listening to the creak of the dock, the whisper of the tide, the wind pressing against the lighthouse. And I thought about everything. The lie, the collapse, her return. And I realized closure doesn't arrive wrapped in speeches or grand apologies. It arrives in pieces, in nods across markets, in silences that no longer burn, in distance kept not from anger, but from wisdom. Forgiveness may clear the air, but it doesn't rebuild the bridge. Sometimes peace isn't about fixing. It isn't about rebuilding. Sometimes peace is simply knowing you don't have to fight anymore. I never wanted revenge. Not really. Revenge is a heavy word, bloated, bitter, dripping with poison. It eats the one who carries it before it ever reaches the one it's aimed at.
I didn't want that.
I didn't want to ruin anyone's life. I didn't want to see them hurt the way I had. All I ever wanted was this, for the truth to breathe, to live in daylight. So I let it. It began on an ordinary Tuesday. The kind you don't remember until something unforgettable happens. The fog had rolled in thick over the docks, swallowing the horizon. The sea looked like it had been erased, the world wrapped in a soft gray hush. I sat at my desk, coffee gone lukewarm, scrolling through a forum on small business cybersecurity. That's when I saw it. A headline buried in a discussion thread. False accusation ruins man's life until truth surfaces. I clicked. Out of habit. Curiosity. But what I found wasn't random. It was my story. No names.
No faces.
Just details. Terrifyingly precise details. A man accused by his sister-in-law of getting her pregnant. Betrayed by his wife.
Beaten. Fired.
Exiled. A man who disappeared, only to rebuild. Only to later learn it had all been a lie. And at the bottom, an attachment. An audio file. Her voice. Alina. Cold. Arrogant. Dripping with venom. I told him he did it because I hated how perfect they thought he was. He looked at me like I was nothing. So, I made him into nothing. Word for word. The exact confession I had hidden away for more than 2 years. But I hadn't uploaded it. I knew who had.
Tessa.
She must have copied the file the day I gave her the original. Maybe this was her way of setting the scales straight. Or maybe the weight finally crushed her, and this was how she put it down. Either way, the truth was out. And once it's out, you can't bury it again. Within hours, the story spread. Blogs picked it up. Forums dissected it. Comment sections became battlefields. People argued if it was real or fake. But it didn't matter. The voice was real. The confession was real. And eventually, the dots connected. The whispers returned. But this time, they didn't circle me. They wrapped around the ones who once buried me. Alina's career, gone. She worked at a mid-sized PR firm. The CEO released a statement. We do not tolerate any behavior that undermines the dignity of others. Within days, her name vanished from their site. Within a week, her social media was gone. Jared, the proud coach, the brother who dragged me outside by my collar, resigned. An anonymous complaint referenced his role in violence tied to unproven accusations. Someone leaked the video. It resurfaced like a curse that refuses to stay buried. Eloise, their mother, the woman who once told the town some men are wolves in family clothing. She sat on the board of a charity for women's shelters. When her words came back to light, the board asked her to step down.
No courtroom.
No judge.
No sentence.
But judgment came anyway. The court of public truth.
No lawyers. No gavels.
Just mirrors. And a world that had moved on without them and no longer wanted them back. And me? I stayed quiet. I didn't confirm. Didn't deny. I didn't gloat. Didn't throw gasoline on the fire. I just kept working. Kept building the life they once tried to shatter. The town shifted. People began approaching me differently. Not out of pity. Out of respect. At the marina, a man stopped me. I read something online, he said. Didn't mention names. But if it's even half true, I'm sorry for what you went through. I nodded. That was enough. At the cafe, a woman set a croissant and coffee in front of me. On the house, she said, before walking away. My life didn't change overnight, but it felt lighter. Like for the first time in years, I was walking with the wind at my back instead of against it. Tessa never spoke to me during this time, but I saw her. Still at the clinic. Still quiet. Still present. And I thought about her. About what it must feel like to watch your own family unravel beneath the truth. She had set the fire, but she didn't walk away. She stayed. She let the smoke sting her eyes. She didn't ask for sympathy. In some quiet way, I respected that. One morning, a letter came. No return address.
No handwriting.
Just typed words on clean white paper. You didn't have to do it that way. But you did. You let the truth breathe instead of turning it into a weapon. I don't deserve your kindness. But thank you for not destroying us when you had every right to.
I see that now. T.
I folded the letter. Placed it in the drawer with the others. Not because I needed to reread it, but because I wanted to remember. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it doesn't burn. Sometimes justice is quiet. Undeniable. Enough.
People think justice is loud.
They imagine verdicts, crowds cheering, headlines. But what I learned was this. Justice can be a whisper. A story posted online. A recording set free. A nod from someone who once doubted you. Justice doesn't always punish. Sometimes it simply reveals. And once revealed, the world can't look away. The guilty can't look away. They're left with nothing but their own reflection. That's what happened to Alina, to Eloise, to Jared. They weren't jailed. They weren't fined. But they were seen. The truth saw them. And worst of all, for them, they saw themselves. One evening, as I was closing the workshop, a teenager came in. 17, maybe. Nervous. Shifting from foot to foot. "You the guy who built the truth blog?" he asked. I frowned. "What?"
He stammered.
"That story online. About the lie. About the man who disappeared but came back stronger. That's you, right?" I didn't answer. Didn't have to. He nodded anyway. "I just wanted to say that story helped me. A lot. I almost gave up on myself this year. People once believed I did something I didn't. And the truth is, after a while, I almost believed it too." The boy shifted nervously, then pulled something from his backpack. A sketch pad. He flipped it open and held the page out to me with both hands. "My teacher told me to draw something that made me feel strong again," he said. On the page was a faceless man, standing in the middle of a storm. Lightning cracked behind him. His feet planted, unshaken. Beneath it, in bold letters, the caption read, "Truth doesn't flinch." I stared at it longer than he probably expected me to. The drawing was raw, imperfect, but it carried weight. More truth than any courtroom I had ever stepped in. I stood, shook his hand, and said quietly, "Hold on to that strength.
Don't let them rewrite you."
He left smiling, and I sat back at my desk, feeling something I hadn't in a long time, calm.
Steady.
Almost whole. That's when it hit me. Why I had never posted Alina's recording myself. Why I had waited. Why I chose to rebuild before releasing the truth. Because justice isn't just about them seeing what they did. It's about me knowing who I am, no matter what they said. There are two kinds of people in this world. Those who are made by what happens to them, and those who decide who they become after. For years, I thought I was the first kind. The man shaped by circumstance. I lived trying to be good, reliable, useful, believing that if I gave enough, forgave fast enough, loved hard enough, people would stay.
People would stand by me.
But when the storm hit, they didn't hold on. They let go. And I fell. But here's the secret about falling. Sometimes you land on something solid. Yourself. These days, I still wake before the town. Not because nightmares shake me anymore, but because I've come to love the silence before the world stirs awake. I brew coffee slowly. Watch the fog crawl across the harbor. I don't check my phone. I don't scroll headlines. I just sit,
Breathe.
and remind myself, peace isn't found in being seen. Peace is found in no longer needing to be. Most mornings I walk into town. Not because I must, but because I can. People greet me now. Casual. Respectful. With no shadows behind their eyes. It took years to earn that. Not by shouting my innocence. Not by proving my side of the story. But by living in a way that made the lie irrelevant. I pass the clinic sometimes. See Tessa through the window, bent over a clipboard, or kneeling beside a child. Occasionally, our eyes meet. When they do, we nod. Nothing more. Nothing less. She kept her promise. Never crossed the line. Never tried to force words that didn't belong. And for that, I respected her far more than any apology she might have given. I know her family has scattered now. Alina, another city, another name, another mask. But you cannot run your reflection forever. Jared. Teaching part-time, I heard. A shadow of who he once claimed to be. Eloise, always on the move. Traveling, searching for towns where no one remembers her face. And me? I stayed. I built. I own 3 buildings in town now. Rented one to a couple starting a podcast studio. Another to a marine gear supplier. My tech business runs online, reaching 6 countries and growing. I never advertised. I didn't need to. The work spoke for itself. The truth always does. But here's something no one tells you when your life burns down. Healing isn't loud. It doesn't come with trumpets, banners, or applause. Healing is quiet, subtle. It lives in the smallest moments, sipping tea while coding, choosing a new chair for the office, helping a stranger carry boxes upstairs. One afternoon, nearly a year after my story spread, a local school reached out. They were starting a youth program on digital ethics and resilience. They asked if I would speak. Not because they knew my story, but because they had seen the life I built and thought it might mean something to the kids.
I said yes.
When I walked into the room, a dozen young faces looked up. Some curious, some distracted, a few searching for something they couldn't name. I told them my story, sanitized, trimmed. Not betrayal, not slander, but survival, renewal, choosing to learn instead of collapse. One boy raised his hand. His voice was small, almost trembling. How do you stop being angry at the people who ruined your life? I smiled. You don't, I said. You just stop renting them space in your head. You stop carrying their actions as if they define you. You outgrow their power by building a life so full they can't fit into it. He nodded. Maybe he understood. Maybe not yet. But one day, those words might find him when he needs them most. That night, I stood on my porch with a cup of warm cider. The sky stretched clear, littered with stars. Thousands of quiet lights, indifferent to everything below. And I thought about the man I used to be. The one standing frozen in his kitchen, coffee cup shaking in his hand, as his life collapsed around him because of one invented sentence. I don't recognize him anymore. He was soft, too eager to please, too desperate to believe love was owed instead of earned. And me now? I am deliberate. With my time, my trust, my silence. Months ago, before she stepped back for good, Tessa once asked me quietly, "Do you think we could ever find a way back?"
I didn't answer then.
Just looked at her. But if she asked me now, I would. I would say, that man you were married to, he's gone. He died the moment you struck him, without a question. The man standing here today doesn't belong to your story anymore. He wrote a new one. People believe survival is the end. But survival is only the beginning. Because once you realize you can survive being erased, you start to wonder, what else could I become if I stopped living to be acceptable and started living to be true? True to myself, to my own voice. So here it is. My name, my truth. My name is Adrian Miles. I was accused, beaten,
Erased.
abandoned, but I did not stay buried. I returned. Not for revenge, not for vindication, but to choose who I would be, without anyone's permission. And this time, the only name I answer to is mine. Fully.
Proudly.
Without apology.